Huh? Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. 10 seconds to start here. Easy pace ride. Welcome, welcome, everyone. This is your Monday Chat and Chill. This is a steady pace ride. We're going to keep at 1.5 to 2 watts per kilogram. So let me just text the riders here very quickly. Letting everybody know that we are live on Facebook Zwift Live by ODZ. We are also live on Mixer, Twitch, YouTube, and Discord. Last text here. All right, welcome everyone. So we have a special guest today. I'm very, very, very excited to have with us today Tom Danielson. You probably have heard of Tom. He is a former pro cyclist who rode for the UCI Pro Team, Cannondale, and also Discovery Channel, among other teams. Has had a brilliant career. He's also the founder and head coach of Cinch Cycling. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks for having me.
It's really a pleasure to have you. So could we then start by talking a little bit about how you started in cycling? Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Well, I started in cycling with motocross. I got into riding dirt bikes when I was little, and got super passionate about that. And my parents thought that was a little bit too dangerous for me to do, so they put the kibosh on that. And I got into I looked for the next closest thing, and that was two wheels with knobby tires, but mountain bike. So I raced mountain bikes as a kid and was super good at that. It was like the first thing
Hey,
I was.
Tom, sorry to interrupt you for a second. You're a little bit soft. Maybe we can adjust the volume on our end. Let me check here. Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, I was it was like the first thing I was good at in my life. So I got excited about that. Really driven about mountain biking, and it was really cool. I was this young guy who wasn't very good at ball sports, and then all of a sudden I found something that people were paying attention to me with. So I became focused, and I was probably 14 years old, and it was really a sport that I could combine my love for being outside with pushing hard, working hard, training every single day. I loved being able to put in hard work and see progress. So even at a young age, we were talking about this yesterday. I fell in love with the process of training when I was 14 years old. I lived in Connecticut. It was really cold winters. It was before Swift. And I would just go out and train in these really bad conditions. My hands would go numb, my face would go numb, and I did it day in and day out. I loved the sacrifice, and that's really how I found cycling. I went to Fort Lewis College in Durango, Colorado. My parents made me go to college, and it was there that I found road cycling. And then, from there, I made the transition, and that was really where my career in cycling launched. Was, I was able to use my light body weight with having a bigger engine, and then my passion for training and the daily process, and the two came together, and was pretty good at road cycling.
So wow, it started pretty early. Um, and then once you became a pro, what's the best thing about being a world tour pro cyclist? And did it become less fun? Did cycling become less fun after you became a pro, or if there's anything that sort of is not as fun as before you became a pro?
No, no. When I became a pro, what I loved the most about cycling was the process, and I think it just justified it. Like, I could do it, and I got paid to do it. And one of our friends and I were talking last night, and it's like a lot of the really good, successful racers are the ones that just are obsessed with daily training routine, and they love day in, day out, making no sacrifices. So for me, cycling became more fun because I was able to travel the world, ride all these different locations, meet different people, see different races, different cultures. Like it became more fun, and just simply because it was a job didn't change anything. I think there was heavier ups and downs, but it just, the better I got, the better I could be, the harder I could train, and I just loved again the training routine. It was cool. I lived in Girona, Spain, half the year, and such a great place for training. Amazing roads, amazing culture, great food, a lot of really cool people that live there. So being a pro was like the dream from that end. So much great training, and amazing places.
Sure. What are some of the things that, let's say, are hard about being a pro that us from the outside might not realize?
I think the hardest thing about being a pro is just the daily commitment and the pressure. I think that people don't understand the pressure of being, you have to perform, that people are watching, that your sponsors are watching. It sounds simple at first. It's like, oh, well, you're getting paid, but I mean, as most of you guys know, we're human beings, and to be able to be consistent and perform at a high level every day is hard. And when you're a pro, like whether you're racing or not racing, it's just as hard to get that consistent. Like you might target a race, team says this is your objective, and you put everything into it. It doesn't work out, but there's that pressure that you have to perform, and you need to think still that there's an equation that equals great performance. Well, you do the work, and then you don't do the work, or you rest, and then you perform well, and that's just not how it works, right? There's so many other factors, and I think that's something that people don't know.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's a great point about having to perform and having that pressure, because like you said, we're human beings in human bodies, right? And sometimes it's not only about getting our bodies ready, but also our minds ready. But some days are just not how we plan them to be. I see that in training. So, Tom, I got a comment that your mic is in and out a little bit. I don't know if you're...
My mic is what?
Going in and out. I guess if you are perhaps speak close to your microphone there, that should be okay. Thank you. So Tom, you are just an amazing climber. You're known for climbing. So what did you do to become such an amazing climber?
Honestly, someone told me I was a good climber, and that was enough. When I was little, I would go up these hills, and people would just say, "Oh, you're a good climber," and that was enough for me to believe that I was a good climber. I didn't really know it at first. I think that goes a long way, where you tell someone that they're good at something and encourage them, then they actually can find that path and believe in themselves. And for me, that was one person that said, "Hey, you're a good climber," and that's what started it all for me. Is I lived in Connecticut. There was really short climbs, and that I told myself I was a good climber living in Connecticut, and I would go and race all across the country as a junior at big races on big mountains like in California, and I believed I was a good climber going into them, and that was all I needed, was just to believe. So today, fast forward to being a good coach, and it's really about looking at things that make people good climbers besides power to weight ratio, and telling people what to look for and how to encourage them, because there's 8,000 ways to go up climbs. You don't need to have a good power to weight ratio. You don't have to look a certain way. It can be everything from your style of riding, the zones that you build, to how you pace yourself. There's so many components to being a good climber, so that's important. It's really believing in yourself and then learning how to do what you want to do on the climb.
That's very interesting, because I've heard so many times people say, "Oh, I'm never going to be a good climber because I'm too tall, or I'm too heavy, or my part of weight is not the number that it should be." And so what you said there is interesting, because it essentially says, no, that's not true, right? You can be a good climber. Anyone can be, because there's so many different ways. So
yeah,
speaking
look
of
at
training,
that guy right there with the aero bike and the camo jersey. He's a good climber. He just right past everyone. He didn't have the equipment for it.
Sure. So speaking of training then, Tom, you started Cinch cycling. Tell us a little bit more about that. What is Cinch, and what made you decide to start it?
Well, Cinch cycling started in sort of a weird way. I was still racing and had something horrible happen to me, and lost my career for a mistake that wasn't something I had control over. And I went from all these dreams and aspirations to being left at the side of the road with nothing. So I made a choice. I had two choices. I had one to give up and move on in my life, and for something that I wanted to still be involved in cycling. I love cycling. I didn't do anything wrong, and I wasn't a bad person that people were saying I was, and I wanted to still be involved in cycling at the level that I wanted, that I could be. So I made a choice to stay in the sport, and I always loved helping other people. That was one of the things that I loved the most about being a professional cyclist, was being able to meet people and inspire people and change their lives. At the time, I thought riding fast hills was a great way to change people's lives by motivating them. And then I later learned that people wanted to learn what they could do, like how their training could be here, or how they could change their riding style. So basically, I started a business that was a coaching business, which at first I had a hard time with, because I felt like most coaching businesses, or at least I heard the name coaching in cycling, and I hated it. Most people that said they were coaches were like, they just gave people training plans, and I don't want to do that. I want to being involved with people, and I want to change people by more than just giving them intervals. So
Mhm.
I started Cinch cycling with the idea that I was going to take everything that I learned, good and bad, from my 15 years in the world tour, simplify it. So that's where Cinch comes from, making something simple and giving it to them in millions of different ways to change their lives through cycling. And more specifically, looking at them from a performance perspective. So not just about watts and power to weight, but what are the components that go into performance? Well, it's execution, it's control, strategy, mental component, nutritional components, all these things together. And I did it at a time where I couldn't use my name because there were so many bad things that were said about me. I had to create something so good that I could go to people and say, this is what I do. I do this, this, and this, and I change people's lives with it. And that's how it started. Is I was terrified to go out and speak to people about it, and I did it. I got out there. I said, what? This is who I am. This is what I do. What I love to do. Can I help you? And people were like, yeah, that sounds great. And we grew quickly, and here I am today, living this dream. Really proud of the story behind it. Really proud of the journey, and I just love what I do.
So Tom, it's a little bit like the I get a little bit of feedback. It's a little bit like the teacher, because sometimes the teacher being excellent at something doesn't automatically translate into somebody being an amazing teacher, right? In your
Yeah.
case, what I can say, because you're my coach now and I have been working with you, and even though it's only been a couple of weeks, I can tell that you are just a very talented and an amazing coach. I mean, in
Oh, thank
these
you.
few weeks that I have been working with you, I've learned so much. And I also found that in many ways, and this is something that you alluded to already, in many ways, the way that you train your athletes is different than the traditional training plans out there, right?
Mhm.
So you started talking about it a little bit, but what is your main philosophy in training athletes when you think about their training plans, or what you're gonna, how you're gonna develop your athletes?
Well, it really starts with why, and basically, why are they training? Why are they? Um, and you can specifically ask people that, and they usually give you great answers. And also, I like to watch. I like to listen a lot. Love to listen to what people say, the feedback, and I start to construct a process around them, around their why, and incorporate their perspective, which is their life. How does what they're doing fit into their life? So everyone has a different perspective. Whether they're a mom, or they have a job, or they don't have a job, or they have these obligations, they have these constraints and opportunities around them. Putting those two together and then building a process to help them get to where they want to go. But the cool thing is that where they want to go is always where they can go. So also educating them along the way about the process and about what they're doing, and what they're capable of, and helping them to see things that they couldn't see before, where they were going. So a lot of times you'll have people that come in with one objective and they're capable of so much more. And then what I love to do is bring it around and say, these things that you're achieving and accomplishing and feeling in cycling, well, they also will help your life in the areas of family as well, which has been a really cool part of the journey for me, seeing the effect of all these great chances and opportunities for personal fulfillment that people get through the program, watching them change their lives off the bike has been huge. It's been an incentive for me to even go deeper in that area. I absolutely love it. But for me, again, it's about that daily process and bringing those four components. So for me, focus, which is like the mental component, fitness, which is the zones, so the strength, the efficiency, the things that everyone traditionally talks about. Then execution, which is skills and control, the things that most people don't know anything about, and just teaching people how to use
I can
different things
confess
like
I'm one of them. Yeah, I had no
power
idea.
control, power control, zone control, learning which zone you put where at different times, like when we did this whip race, learning where you could attack, could sit in, and not always playing other people's game, but your own. And then finally, nutrition. And my perspective on nutrition is a little bit different than most people. Is that it doesn't need to be so rich, more about looking at certain concepts and applying them and everything. So teaching people how to apply the key concepts at the right time. But overall, to me, like coaching it needs a learning experience. And look at all other world businesses of coaching, especially like the business coaching or life personal coaching, even specific sports that our kids are in school coaching. Education is a big part of that experience. People hire coaches because they want to learn. They want to learn a sport. They want to learn a process. People initially come to coaches because they want to get stronger, right? Or they want to perform better. But people are there because they want to learn and they want that experience of learning. So I put a big focus around that and love that. And I think that's an advantage I have for my career, that I have been on all the highs, all the lows, every illness, every injury, every mental situation, every nutritional situation, every success, failure. There's so much that's in my head that it's cool that I can really lessons in so many different levels. It's not like someone gets to one level in cycling, they're not reading out of the guidebook or reading someone's book to try to answer the questions. It's like I live that. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right.
And I think that's a really cool opportunity that I have.
That is a big difference. It really is. What you just said there at the end, the difference between reading books, learning about training zones, etc., whatever methodology a coach might want to follow, but really having lived and gone through everything that you went through. So, yes, I'm very fortunate to have this opportunity to work with you. So you touched a little bit about a little bit about training zones, and your training zones are different than, for example, the traditional zones 1 through 5 that a lot of people use. Can you explain a little bit how your training zones are different and how they relate to the real world?
Yeah, so when I first started coaching, I honestly didn't know about this whole new world of FTP and all these training zones. I had only been immersed in that pro cycling world, and no one ever gave me any training zones or anything like that. They would just specifically give me like power to go by, and whether they calculated on training zones, I wasn't sure. But one of the things that I didn't like about my experience racing in coaches that I'd worked with is that there was a big disconnect between performance and training. And I love the training side of things. So when I was training, I top of the world, and I felt like I was really successful. I was really confident. Then I would go to races, and I didn't know how to translate what I was doing in training race, whether it was I performed well or poorly. I didn't really put a finger on, well, how does that really relate to how I've been training? So I set out to change that with coaching, is I thought, well, I'm going to figure out zones that I use in the racing. So learn how to calculate, come up with the value of performance. And I had enough experience with an education on working with great sports scientists on what zones you needed to use to stimulate progression. But I took on the challenge of, okay, like, let's actually use zones that you perform with on climbs and time trials and riding in the Peloton, and let's use those zones in training, and let's use them in a way that they'll correlate between the racing and the training. So that is something that I do very unique. Is the zones are performance zones. So your training is now the exercise that you do in training might be different, but the way you do them is important. You may be doing them lower level in training, but those zones are specifically what you're going to be using in races. And what ends up happening with that is you have really empowered athletes. They know how to create strategies. And as a coach, I can actually create strategies with them and communicate through that power, which they are very familiar with because they use it in their daily process. So there's no, I call it avoiding pulling a rabbit out of the hat. There's no mystery when you get to the races. You know your zone of, and then you know the ways that you can execute it in different scenarios. If you get to a climb and you use the right zones in the right way, what drops you, well, they were better. There's nothing to be down on. You feel good about yourself. And then if you do execute your zones and you win the climb, well, that's awesome. You did a great job. But both ways, it's the same congratulations you'd get from me. And personally, you can feel the same amount of happiness and success within, because you've done a good job, and that's what it's about, is that personal progress and feeling good about yourself every single day because you gave your best. And this is a way that you actually know that you gave your best, even though there's other people that tend to influence how you feel.
Right. Yeah, so many good things there. That focus on yourself is something really important. And so talking about the zones and the workouts, for example, that I get from you, you don't have the typical, let's say, sweet spot workout of, 4 by 10 minutes at sweet spot or 2 by 20, etc. So you use shorter blocks, I guess, in a way, and a lot of variation within those. So it's a lot of variation in cadence, it's a lot of variation in power, standing, seated. Why is that?
Well, specifically is, again, I'm trying to translate what actually happens in cycling to what you're doing in training. So, it's kind of funny that some of the techniques that you read about in what other people are doing and what's popular, like the sweet spot. This theory has been around for the beginning of time, that if you train below your threshold, then you'll raise your threshold. People always say, well, push the roof up from the bottom, and it's just common sense, right? People are like, oh, it's backed by science. You're right, like, it is backed by science. Like, if you do work below your threshold, you'll raise your threshold. It's but there's a lot of other sciences, a lot of other things that are much higher level. So, I think it's a very, like, training spot, whatever, is a very expensive way to train. These large amounts of time, sort of wearing out your body to achieve a very small result. People are focused on their FTP. Using this methodology, you spend a lot of energy for a very small return. And as we know, or really don't, maybe you don't know, but I know, is that your FTP really doesn't, or your threshold really doesn't do anything. You know, it's just it's a measurement, it's a test, it's something that people use as a reference to try to put a number on fitness. So essentially, people are spending a lot of energy to prove that they have fitness, that their fitness is going up. And again, science says that you train more, this will go up. So, you know, again, this is really simple stuff. And the thing that also science says is that if you train too much, your fitness will go down. So it's like, how do you figure out the right amount? And that's what all this stuff is calculating based on a lot of measurements that I've taken over time, what the right amount of each zone to put in, basically the minimum to get the maximum result. So I start with the focus of actually creating goals that are things that you would do in cycling. So whether I saw Chris Froome do it on the climb, or Valverde, or whoever else, or I did it, or whatever, you know, to create all these execution things into intervals to make them fun, and then also make them. And then I go in and I put in the right amounts of each zone, and then I use it in the same way that you would use it in a real race or in a real scenario. So one of the big things about cycling, and I'm sure you guys have seen it, whether in group rides with Swift or, you know, in races, is that cycling is about clearing lactate. And really that is the number one limiter in cycling, is your ability to flood yourself with lactate and clear lactate. And what that is changing the rhythm, changing the pace. And, you know, it's not just about always clearing large amounts of lactate. It could be smaller amounts of lactate. But and what lactate represents is essentially the energy zone that you're using. So if you're using fat as a fuel, or if you're using fat and sugar, or using all sugar or glycogen, you know, that is the big indicator, is, you know, or the limiter is what energy system you're using at what time. And then with my intervals, the best way to improve is to, you know, stimulate these zones in really creative and confusing ways. You know, your body reacts amazing to change. So, you know, constantly changing the states that your body's in during your ride, jumping between different intervals, and then playing around with different skills during these power or these energy zones. So, you know, for example, in you like high cadence, you can do high cadence for a million different things with a million different powers. So, you know, changing that, confusing the brain, and then having to hold a level of control while you're changing things. It just teaches you so much more while you're getting stronger. And like I've said it before, I'll say it again, it's just not enough to always focus on becoming stronger, because if that was the case, then everyone would be like Incredible Hulk, right? Because like you would be performing you always be getting stronger. It's like, well, where's the limit on that? You know, like, listen, guys, like I've been doing like my entire life, you know, like there's no limit for you guys anytime soon. So, you know, you can't be focused on always putting more power on a certain testing parameter, because that's just not performance. That's not where your progression is going to go. You know, another great statement is, you know, the last, whatever, 5-6 years of my career, my threshold power was the same. So I did about 420 watts at threshold, and I had 420 watts at threshold, and I was in the battle, and I had 420 watts at threshold, and I was winning off the front by a minute. So it didn't matter what my threshold was. It was what I could do all around it is what that made the difference of performing or not performing.
Right. That makes so much sense, Tom. You know, a couple of things there. So I don't feel as tired or sometimes even useless after a workout anymore like I used to. I just remember working so hard and being so tired from it. It doesn't happen anymore with the workouts that I do with you. The workouts that you prescribe are essentially then what the pros use, right? Is what, and like you said, it's not about power, because if you think about a pro peloton, chances are everybody has very close bar to weight. So what's going to differentiate somebody who's going to win and somebody who's not going to win, right? So it all makes sense to me. And
Yeah, like
you also, go
good
ahead.
example of this is the Tour de France. You were to take everyone's power to weight going into the Tour de France, everyone would be almost the same, going into it. And then as you can see during the Tour de France in the evening, there's people that are hours ahead of other ones. And again,
Right.
it's all about that zone efficiency, how they've trained and their knowledge of how to use their zones in the races. Be the strongest guy in the world, and if you don't have, like you've seen these zones that you can fall on, so you do these big efforts, but then where do you land? You need a place to land after the effort. You have to know where it is, how long you can do each zone. That's a big question, right? Everyone's so focused on threshold, 20-minute efforts and all this cool stuff, and it's like, what does that even mean when you're in Chicago and you go up a 2-minute climb and someone launches it? What do you do?
Right.
What power do you drive? With their 20-minute power or whatever. It's just like, I just don't have that. If you have that, you just don't practice it. Go, learn that stuff. Go after those people. Learn how to with the climbing. There's 400 million ways at cycling. Like you don't have to follow the traditional, power to weight threshold to be good at cycling. You can write a script however you want for people to be good at cycling, and I think that is the best thing about cycling, because of the mechanics of the bike. And there's so many ways, and the technology around training. There's so many ways to be awesome at it and to improve every day of your life, no matter your age. And that's why it's a sport that nothing else is like.
Right. So, Tom, you mentioned cadence too, and how there's a million ways of working with cadence. That is something that your athletes focus on quite a bit. So, what's the importance of cadence? Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. So cadence, in my mind, is very similar to whatever the RPMs in an engine. And when you're driving your car, you can see that different RPMs and different gears have a different effect on your car, on your engine when you're driving. It's the same on the bike. Is that you can use cadence as a means of building and maintaining or lowering momentum. And as I, made the transition from pro racer to coach, this is something I actually didn't even know that I did, or that we did as in the races. And I would see these people on these rides, and they would just have like one cadence, and they would stall out on all these different parts of the road. And I would just look at them and I'd be like, why did you do that? You lost all that speed. And they had no idea. So I started to write things into the workouts to basically try to teach people how to change their cadence. And then I would apply different energy zones to those cadences for two reasons. One, to make them more efficient, but then also to test them in changing the cadence and the right timing. What that does essentially is ways to build free speed. If you apply a different cadence at the right time, it will actually increase your speed, increase your momentum. And this actually works in the virtual world as well. I've messed around with it on Zwift, being able to change your gearing and change your cadence in the transitions between the climbs and things like that, to help build more momentum. And, another key component of changing the cadence is, lowering your effort level with the same power. So, basically you build a general way of thinking is that you use a higher cadence to accelerate, and you use a lower cadence to maintain speed. So you're always kind of going between those cadence ranges depending on what you're doing out on the bike. So, if you're in a group ride, it's critical to be able to do this, because you guys all probably remember or know about the surges, the annoying surges in the group rides. Well, changing your cadence is actually how you build with the surges. You don't need to sprint, slam on your brakes, sprint, slam on your brakes, keep going back and forth through that. You can actually change simply the gear that you're in and maintain the same power, and close those gaps without actually changing the zone that you're in and the effort you're in. A good example of this was I got Rigoberto Urán's power file from the Tour de France. It was out on the internet, and I brought it. I got it for our group. I brought it up, and I showed everyone how he was so steady on all the climbs and through all the valleys between, during that stage that he won, and how he stayed in his energy zones. So it was pretty cool, dissecting that, showing that to the group, and saying, look, here's his low threshold, here's his threshold, here's his medium zones. And you could see that he would basically alternate his cadence to stay within those zones no matter what was happening in the race. I mean, you guys were even attacking him on the last climb, and all he was doing was going higher and lower cadence, which was really cool to see, and to be able to show that to people on a high level is even though the race is not being dictated by him, he's able to stay within his zones at the front of the race by changing his cadence. So cadence, guys, is enormous. There is not one size fits all cadence, and definitely higher is not better.
Fascinating. The workouts do vary a lot in cadence and power, so I can see that being used in the workouts. You mentioned Zwift and how, for example, cadence also translates here in the Zwift world. About a week or so ago, almost 2 weeks ago now, you had you coached me through a Zwift race. So you were watching me and we were talking and you were coaching me through it. What are some of the differences between racing in real life and racing in Zwift that you have observed?
Yeah, so, since working with you, I've had to really look much closer at the Zwift world and Zwift racing, because, that is, your one of the big parts of your why, and what motivates you is this community and this new part of cycling that is, really evolving quickly. So for me, I started to take a much closer look, and what I found is that because of the drafting equations that they used, it is very different than outdoors road cycling, and to me it's very similar to actually climbing. So even though you're racing on a flat road, with the way the race works and the way it looks is how it would look if you were racing of just one, I think excuse me, your race was 45 minutes long. It was like one 45-minute, and so when you are drafting, you're basically still doing work like you would doing on the climb, and it goes back to what's super important in climbing, and that is your ability to have all these places to go off of what I call low threshold. So low threshold is really your foundation for a Zwift race. The higher that is, the better you're going to be in the Zwift race. But then being able to do things from that, so accelerations and surges, and that's what we've started playing around with. Is it is hard to drop people of similar ability in Zwift. We found out. So you have to have that really good platform of low threshold, but knowing how long and how hard you can go from that. With that again in mind, that you're not going to be able to land on something lower than generally your low threshold. It is like a climb. If you draw the sword and you cut someone, you go after someone, go on a hill, you better have a place to land afterwards, because you're gonna be stuck out there, drowning with no place to hold yourself up. It's crazy. It's very hard in the Zwift world. It is very much like climbing and racing on climbs. So had to really apply sort of a climbing focus to your training and your execution in races. And I guess another thing that we learned in the Swift world that I think is important for everyone to listen is that it's very hard to close gaps for whatever reason. Once you get a gap in the Swift world, it seems that's the gap. That also is very unlike, real world road cycling, is that if you have a 15-second gap in the Zwift world, that gap's probably not going to come back. For whatever reason, the computer makes the gap, and then it just kind of stabilizes it or whatever. So it's really important to follow all the attacks, because when someone gets ahead, like we saw those two girls that just kind of slipped away in that rolling section, and it was like no matter how hard we tried to go across on that big climb, we couldn't make any headway. Your power to weight ratio was way above theirs, and you still weren't making any ground on the gap. So for sure, it has to be the software. So again, something taken into consideration that don't let gaps go. It's not going to come back.
Right. Very interesting. We have quite a few people here on the ride today who race a lot in Zwift, so I'm sure they can relate to that. Perhaps they haven't thought of it fully that way, but from experience.
Mm-hmm.
So, Tom, shifting gears a little bit, I hear a lot from athletes questions about heart rate, training with heart rate, looking at heart rate. What's your take on that for using heart rate in cycling?
My honest take is that heart rate is an output, not an input. So I think it's okay to have heart rate, look at heart rate, but I think it's very difficult to actually use heart rate to steer your training. And the main reason for this, it's just it varies so much. So, if you're fresh, different by as many as 10, 15 beats per minute. If you're tired, it can be lower by a difference of 10, 20, 30, 50 beats per minute. So, if you're fresh, it changes quickly. If you're tired, it changes slower. And it does it in these increments that, when I define tired or fresh, it's as simple as taking one rest day, or as simple as having 3 days of training in a row. So the heart is changing how it reacts to things, but the body maybe is not, right? Like maybe the body is fresh, maybe the muscles are recovered, maybe the glycogen levels are back up. There's a lot of things that aren't limiting training, and the heart is still able to perform at the same level despite being lower, because it's fatigued, or being higher because it's fresh. So, as a coach or as an athlete, you have to take that into consideration. Say, okay, well, it is different, but I'm not doing damage in my body like I'm training. That is one of the adaptations of training recovery, right? So, we stack different days on top of one another because we're teaching our bodies how to become more efficient with refueling, repairing muscle, being able to sleep when we're fatigued. All these things is part of the training response that we're looking for. So it's important that we know that when we're looking at heart rate. And from go back around, that is why I don't really put a whole lot of focus on heart rate. It usually tells a story that we already know. You have your baselines, you have your zones, roughly where things are, but they change. And when they change, we always know the answer. There's never a time that your heart rate is low or high and you don't know why. Oh wow, right. It's low. Oh, but I didn't get any sleep last night. Okay, well we already know that. You don't really need to
right.
dwell on that or whatever. It's part of life. We're not going to change, your training that much because of something like that. But if it's a pattern that happens over and over again, yes, then we are going to change it. But as soon as it's time to change it, you'll see the performance decline in output, the watts that are coming out. And you're looking for patterns outside of that, with mood, demeanor, feeling. These things are all so much more powerful than actually the heart rate. So I'd say that the best way to heart rate monitor, that probably no one actually does, is check your heart rate, resting heart rate every morning. I think that's what the heart rate monitor is most effective for, because that tells a story that we might actually not know the narrative to.
Right.
And if your body is about to get sick or it's stressed that you're not familiar with, you're going to see it there. You're not going to see it other places. But very rarely do people still do that. But I'd say that that's what it's for, not really dictating inputs. Again, just confirming outputs.
Right. I'm with you on the heart rate. I don't give it as much importance in terms of training, and also the max heart rate that people sometimes obsess over. It's a bit like shoe sizes, right? Everybody has a different number. It's sort of like what your body does. Just because my max heart rate is 203 doesn't mean that I'm much more fit than other people, So, yeah, that makes sense to me. So, Tom, shifting gears a little bit on more of the mental side of things, and how much do you think a cyclist's performance can be attributed to having good mental skills?
Yeah, absolutely enormous. Again, we're talking about the FTP and the obsession over that. The mental skills is more powerful than any of that, and especially in cycling, where we're constantly looking for confirmation and an understanding of where we're at all the time. So if you're on a ride, you're looking at yourself for ways to either show yourself you're strong or you're not strong. And oftentimes, the more we get, we want to look at ways to tell ourselves that there's something wrong, or we're not good enough. When you're fresh, a lot of times you have that sort of confident state. So you're looking for ways to make yourself feel more confident. The trick is being able to flip those two. When you're fatigued, that you're able to find that confidence that you can be fresh. When you're fresh, to be humble, and sort of have that state of gratitude that you have when you're fatigued. So that is kind of the secret in a nutshell, is being able to change your mental state on demand, how you want, no matter the physical state that you're under. So, a lot of people think that's in this, the way you do that is you just go harder, you become tougher, or you try more. But that kind of thinking more, really, like, as we all know, when you're in that painful state, and you're really in a bad place physically, you just don't think rationally. A good example of that is like when I was racing, it would be raining and cold, and we would go back to the car and try to get, gloves and jackets and things like that. And the conversations that you would have in the back of the car were just completely irrational, because, you're freezing, going super hard, you were losing your mind. And I would just be like back in the car thinking, like, if I don't get those gloves, like, I'm not going to live. Like, I need those, you'd be screaming at the director, I need those gloves now. Like, if I don't get these gloves, like, I'm not going to make it. And, these guys are going, like, they're driving the car, like, whatever, 20 miles an hour, just staring at you. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's totally fine, And you'd be like you'd be like, open my bar wrapper. You think, like, if I don't get this wrapper open and I don't eat, like, I'm not going to live. Like, and you're just completely irrational, screaming, open the wrapper. And, trying to get this bar in your mouth. It's totally irrational. And it's because that physical state is overriding the brain, and it's just not working right. So being able to, find ways to regroup and come back to that confident state. And for me, that looks like patterns that you build. So, basically words and emotions that you visit over and over and over again during your training, that you start to learn how to access tools and weapons out on the bike. So, for me, some of the important words that I used were, focus, flow. One of the words that I liked was bounce. So when I had fresh legs, I had like a bouncy feeling in my legs, like when they're full of glycogen, they bounce from like pedal stroke to pedal stroke. I would like keep repeating that word, and you guys all know when you're fatigued and you're empty, it's like this crunchy, dull feeling in your legs, like they just don't bounce, right? They're like blocked. And I would just say like bounce. I visualize bouncing. Breathing was another one. A lot of times, like with my athletes now, I focus on get that breathing rate back under control. So that's really important. Your respiration rate really does control your output. A lot of times when we start to panic because we think we're going too hard, we shorten our respiration rate, we get shallower, and that tenses our body up. So if you're able to slow down your respiration rate by exhaling, taking big exhales, that sort of resets that physical component, your body kind of follows. So just little things like that, that will help you return to that proper mental state where you can start to think more rationally, and confident in the moment, even though your body is telling you something.
Right. I love that. It's not about telling yourself, just toughen up and do it. Yeah, and during the race that you coached me live in Zwift, the breath was something that, there was a point at the race, it was probably the last 5K, that I was breathing so heavily, and you brought me back. You said, just focus on your breathing, exhales, long exhales, and that was a big help, for sure.
Yeah.
So
it's amazing, and when people start to panic or they get in that tough place, it's just like they immediately default, and myself, to that short breathing. And what ends up happening is you work way down, the body tenses up, your arms get, you just can't get that oxygen to your muscles anymore. So you just got to tell your body, like, look, I'm going to input this rate, and I want you to follow what state, mental and physical, that breathing rate is. It works amazing. I mean, I've been in so many scenarios where I was 1K to go on a climb, panicking, freaking out, wanting to give up, and I just a couple big exhales, regrouped, and got it back together.
Yeah. So Tom, we have about 2 minutes to go here for the ride. I want to make sure that people have the chance to know how to contact you. So if somebody wants to hire you as a coach or wants to look up more information about Cinch, and I'm going to post a link to, Kurt already posted a link here on Facebook, so thank you for that.
Oh, thanks, Kurt.
So Tom, yeah, so I guess people can go to your website or your Facebook page as well.
Yeah, and my email is, send me an email at info@cinchcycling.com. And I love chatting and I love people, so I'm not like, you're not going to send an email and I'm not going to get back. Like, I love the contact and communication part of it. So even if you want to say hi or whatever, I'm always available.
And I really appreciate you joining us today. I think it's been an eye-opener in many ways, on how people might want to look at their training, some of the things to consider, and just drawing from that vast knowledge that you have, all the experience that you have. So it's been great, Tom. Thank you so much. There are a lot of other things that I wanted to ask you about, but we don't have enough time.
Oh, sorry. Sorry about that.
No. It's because it's a lot of good stuff. Sure. Yeah.
But I think for everyone out there, a good takeaway, going in your days and everything is that, we're all here because of it. Cycling is a great sport, and your training and your daily riding and routine is important to the other parts of your life. So, definitely respect that, understand that. It's that ninth hour, like that the high performing person, and look at it like that. Look at it as an asset to your life, and just enjoy the journey. Don't obsess or focus on specific things. Just always be making objectives, always be changing them, and always be adapting to B factors, and just have fun. That progression and fulfillment is fun. So go out and get it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tom. Thanks everyone for tuning in, joining. We'll see you next time.
All right, are we off?